Hello, beautiful ladies. Welcome back to another Whamming Hour tonight. I've got the hat on, Birdie's got the overalls on. It's going to be that kind of night. So I hope you're ready for an extraordinary evening of reviewing old movies to tell teenagers how to behave properly in the 50s in America. Birdie, are you excited?
Oh, I'm so excited for this. I even have my American mug, travel mug. That's the word for it.
Got a flag on it, has it? You've been celebrating.
It has. It's got the American flag on it. You can't really see it. It's too shiny, but yes,
I can see the stripes. The irony of the 4th of July. Have you ever heard this? And I can never stop hearing it. The Americans usually say the date by saying the month first. That's when they write it with the number, and when they say it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Most days of the year they'll say July 4th. But the 4th of July as a holiday has a name that's actually in the English style, which is a beautiful irony considering it was about throwing off the English rule. It's not exactly a fact because everyone knows that already, but it's something to. Once I noticed it, someone brought it to my attention. I couldn't stop noticing it every time someone says the 4th of July. But that was a few days ago. Now it's 7th of July, which is, I believe, the Japanese fireworks festival known as Tanabata. So happy Tanabata to any Japanese viewers. I, of course, learned that from watching anime, but I believe it is also true in real life. Let's get right into it, shall we? I found this channel called Old TV Time. It was just recommended to me on YouTube because YouTube knows a strange, strangely accurate in its recommendations sometimes. And I kept getting recommended this video called How Much Affection, which is a film. I mean, we're going to see it, but it's all about teaching teenagers how to properly conduct themselves while dating and controlling their throbbing in biological urges. As
did you have to put it like that, Poe?
But it's very, it puts it in grown up but not crass terms, and I really enjoyed it from start to finish. It's like a dramatization of of this scenario. So I think I'm going to put it up in speed a little bit because I've heard that helps you get under the radar in terms of reviewing it. I don't want to. I don't want it to get taken down because the copyright holders claim we're just stealing their content, which we kind of are, but we're reviewing it. It's transformative in its work. So
we're not showing the whole video. So
yeah, I think we'll skip around a little bit as well.
Yes.
Just trying to get a good aspect as I do when I share things. So we're seeing just the right amount of Birdie and Poe and just the right amount of the video. Because it's in a 5:9 aspect ratio, I believe. I guess it was supposed to be. It was made, I suppose, not for the big movie screen, but for the classroom to put on a projector and play on a whiteboard or on a television. So let's just skip this little bit here. And I've got the subtitles on just in case you can't hear it. You just tell me if you can hear this, Birdie.
Mary, is that you, dear?
Yes, Mother.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely fine.
Cool. Oh, dear Mary. We really take the time there, not too clear with this pacing, are we? Not like these days where it's a cut every 2 seconds.
Yep.
This is very sedate camera work.
Did you have a nice time, dear?
Very nice, thanks.
Well, you don't look much like a girl who's been out having a wonderful evening.
Oh, Mom.
Now, here. Oh, what's the matter, dear?
Do you remember when you told me that I might have such strong feelings about a boy that it might be hard for me to decide what's right to do?
Yes, I remember. Why?
Well, it was something like that tonight with Jeff. You know, I like him an awful lot, and we have such fun.
These files are not completely accurate, but yeah, Jeff, the boy she's on a date with.
Jeff.
Yeah, I couldn't believe having a conversation like this this sort of forthright with one's mother. I don't know if this ever actually happened in the 50s, but it's a extremely mature conversation that these two have without using any overt language. Like what they're talking about is exactly what you think they're talking about, but it's so cloaked and it's so grown up at the same time.
It's appropriate.
This is a conversation they're just having for the sake of the script. It's not a realistic conversation, but I still did enjoy it. Do cut in if you want me to pause it or just talk over it, Birdie. With both happening at the same time, I can't see you and I can't.
I'll just yell at you, Poe. It's fine. I'll just
shut up. Pause if you want me to pause it. You gotta audio.
Fun at dances. Tonight, the feeling between us kept getting stronger and stronger. On our way home, we stopped and parked. And then things seemed to happen. Till we nearly... Oh, it was so close. Suddenly, I realized what we were about to do. I asked Jeff to take me home. I guess he felt ashamed, too. He said he was sorry, that it was his fault.
Do you think it was his fault?
Oh, Mother, I don't know what to think. I'm so mixed up. I don't know whether I even want to go out with Jeff again.
No, dear. I was young once, too.
Reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future. Have you seen that film, Birdie?
Yeah.
Yeah, parked.
I feel like this is definitely not a conversation you would have with your mother. She said, "Oh, we parked, and then things nearly happened." And it's like you said earlier, we know exactly what they're talking about, but you just wouldn't say that to your mom. I certainly would not have said that to my mother. I've just got back from being out on a date with a boyfriend when I'm supposedly still a teenager, and the woman who is playing the daughter is definitely not a teenager.
I think she's a school student, but they never explicitly say how old they are.
No.
I think the idea of a teenager apparently was only like a kind of post-war invention. So obviously this would fall into that category. But what we think of as a teenager doesn't really exist historically. Where there's kind of like you're just kind of an adult after you go through puberty. That they don't have this sort of extended childhood phase where you're grumpily shrugging off your parents all the time. I don't quite understand it myself, like exactly how they thought of the youth. But I do wonder if this advice was supposed to apply to even unmarried adults who were dealing with the same issues that they were as teenagers and expected to stay in that kind of state. Yeah,
I still think it's however old she is, because that could be in whatever ballpark. It is a very sort of odd conversation. She's obviously very close with her mother in this video, in this clip, but I'm wondering how many actual teenagers or people, whoever, what age they were sharing this video to, were sat there and thinking, I'm not that close with my mum. I'd never tell her that this nearly happened in Jeff's car. You just wouldn't.
Imagine in real life the mum coming in and the daughter just going, "Oh, Mom, get out!" Aren't you back rather late? No, good. I hate you.
Oh dear.
Then something of what you feel. First, well, it all seems quite a lark. You like someone, he likes you. Everything is fun and affection. Something
I noticed about this that there continues to be a sort of framing in this video, at least, is that it's that the mum says, like, was it Jeff's fault? And the girl is she Mary is her name. She takes as much responsibility in it as she puts on to her boyfriend Jeff, where they the way they're framing it, these teenagers are both very affectionate towards each other, and they were both caught up in the moment, and they both wanted to engage in this. It's not a kind of coercive situation like you'd see in a kind of more I don't know what you'd say, like it's more, I feel, normal of the kind of time period for women to be coerced into that kind of situation where the woman is seen to be innocent, so you can't possibly want this to happen. But they somehow manage with this character to preserve that sort of innocent sweetness, where because they're just talking about it in terms of affection and love, it never gets too sordid where you start feeling like you want to call Mary a slut or anything. Like she's really quite sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they are definitely talking about, you know, the biological urges, should we call them, you know, the natural ways of things. Whereas, you know, if this was a video nowadays, I would just know full well that the girl would be crying wolf and say, oh yeah, he came on to me, it was entirely him. But then the guy would say the same. He'd be sitting there going, you know, she cried wolf, she, you know, she said she wanted it and all this. And I honestly don't think that the story would have played out the same, if you know where I'm going with this. Let's just say a next step would have been taken, because that was just, you know, compared to today's society to back then, you know, back then it was a very taboo thing to do. You know, you sort of knew to think twice. Whereas now that's just not the way young people think. You know, they're not told to think twice.
The equivalent video that would be shown to today's teenagers would be if you both are in the moment, you both really want it, and it's coming from a genuine place, then why not? Like, just do it. Like if it's legal or whatever, or even if it's not, you know, just keep it safe. Like the advice is always just about preventing disease, preventing pregnancy, and I guess these days the moral panic is about consent. It would be just a video about like, oh, how do I know if I'm ready, or kind of things like that. Whereas this is like a video from Mars, basically, because these two are both really in the moment. They really like each other. It's all good, wholesome fun, and they just want to do it in the car. They just want to park in the car. And in today's society, there actually is nothing wrong with that. And this video doesn't make any sense at all, because that's just encouraged. It's like, if you want to and you're ready, just do it.
Yeah. It's like, why are you questioning this? Why didn't you just do it?
Yeah.
Then all at once, you can find yourself in a situation where your physical urges fight against your reason. Then those fine thoughts of love and affection can suddenly get twisted.
Mother, is it wrong to feel warm and affectionate when you're with a boy you really like?
No, dear, it is not wrong. Because this...
Her eyebrows have just completely yeeted, like, trying to get off her face. I didn't notice that when I first watched this.
And it's because they've got the camera, like, straight on her face now, whereas before it was kind of like nice side shots. And now it's oh, she's actually talking to you now. She's not talking to her daughter anymore. Yes, now she's talking to you. Make sure you're listening.
No, but seriously, like, that's not a natural place for your eyebrows to land, is it?
No, no, it's not. They are, yeah, they're about to, as you said, yeet themselves off her face. They are trying to escape.
They are divorcing.
Feeling can grow into a love that will last. It's the way happy marriages are built. But Mary, if these strong feelings lead you into behaving unwisely, well, the outcome can be guilt and frustration. And these are the things that can spoil the chance of your finding the very love that you're looking for.
I love how sweet the mum is. Like, she's, you know, this is like more perfect than a mum ever could be, the way she's...
I feel like a lot of what she's saying is making a lot of sense as well. You know, she's basically just saying, you know, it's okay to have these feelings, but do actually think, you know, do you, again, like you said earlier, do you want this? And, you know, think, how are you going to feel afterwards? You know, that's something that's actually quite important, I think. You know, it's something that I wish I'd been told, you know, by teachers or, you know, parents when I was younger. You know, how are you going to feel afterwards? You know, but that's just not something that you're taught these days.
But by not being judgmental, she's leaving that kind of sympathy open. Like, she's keeping it like, I'm on your side. Like, we both want to make decisions that are good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And she knows full well, you know, she's been in that position before, you know, herself when she was that age, you know, and that's something, again, that I think is really important to remember. You know, I look at some kids these days and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you know, you had those feelings then, but at the same time, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, but I didn't do that. And I do wonder if it is down to what they are or aren't taught these days, you know, how different society is, and, you know, the complete different, I always want to say, lack of sensitivity towards the subject. because it is just all open and out there, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, I was talking to Mrs. Radlib, who I think viewers of the show will know, and we reviewed the case against the sexual revolution with her last time she was on the show, and I keep meaning to bring her back, and I definitely will. It's just that I never quite get around to it, like planning the show more than a week in advance, so it's hard to bring in guests sometimes if you don't give them some notice. She's got a very busy life.
Yes.
So she'll come back. But when we were talking about that, that book, The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, talks about how the consequence of sex being pregnancy gave women a really, really good reason to say no to encounters that they weren't absolutely sure about, or that or ensuring that there was a commitment to be made ahead of that. Or nailing down the commitment as soon afterwards as possible. When now that's not a real danger, it's much harder to articulate as a young woman who's trying to say no, either because you're not ready or because you don't like the guy or whatever it is. She talks about the way that some women they're just kind of worn down by the persistent requests, and there's no like, because because I might get pregnant. It's really hard to consistently say no.
Yeah, and it is definitely down to the fact that it's no longer a taboo subject. Talking about sex is brought up in daily conversations now. Whereas when I was at school, it was still, don't talk about that. It's, that's a private subject. You just don't talk about. I feel like I'm showing my age now, but you never did talk about it. I didn't talk about it to my parents. I didn't talk about it to my siblings, not even to your teachers, unless you had, sex education class. That was the only time it was brought up. And even then, we were made to feel embarrassed about the subject. It was very much like, oh, don't mention it. It's not something you talk about. Whereas now, I walk down the street and everyone's talking about it, and it's kind of like, I still feel embarrassed. I'm kind of like, oh no,
logging on to Women's Hour and they're talking about it.
Yeah. And it's so what's going on? That you can just talk about it without anybody saying anything, and I do think that it's not a good thing that it is just being kind of thrown up in the air, and it is just one of those sort of subjects now that people are more comfortable talking about it, but I still don't see it as, appropriate workplace topic, things like that. I don't think is appropriate. So when, this clip, when they're talking about it just in terms of being affectionate and, they've not actually mentioned the word once, but we know exactly what they're talking about, and we know exactly where they're going with this subject, but we also know that it is a taboo subject, so they're trying to keep it polite, not just for the topic at hand, but for those who are watching as well, and for the society that this video was involved in.
I think we can't really overvalue the words that we use for things where it's sort of well accepted these days that if you know that you're talking about, then you may as well use word, call a spade, use whatever words you like. We all know what you're saying anyway. You may as well just say it forthrightly. But I think it really does add a level of decorum and make it easier to talk about sometimes if you do shape it around a slightly more roundabout way of saying things. So the way these two talk about affection and love, and it's the kind of thing that I could happily put on this video for my 5-year-old. I don't have a 5-year-old, she's almost 4, but I would be comfortable putting on this video for a child of any age, because it doesn't explicitly mention anything that she wouldn't understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we continue?
Let's see where this goes.
Come here, dear. But if you'll just slow down the rush and pressure of your feelings a little, then judgment has a better chance to take hold and guide you away from wrong behavior. When you can rely on judgment rather than emotion to rule your behavior, as you did tonight, then you'll really be grown up.
And she's actually proud of her for letting her
and I can see both of us nodding then, because I mean, if you tell a teenager now, slow up a bit, there's no rush, they'll go, oh no, just shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, instantly. I mean, my mum's told me to slow up before. You know, I think we've all had it. But the way she's actually worded it is saying, you know, slow up, not in terms of, oh, you're rushing into things, but she's actually saying slow up in terms of your feelings, because then, you know, you'll get the right judgment through, because she knows that these feelings are obviously very high. And I think, again, the complete difference of how we're treating the feelings then to how we treat feelings now. You know, now it's just like, oh, do what you like, I don't care. But then it's actually, no, take care of yourself. You know, because at the end of the day, no one, I mean, she's not saying no, she's not saying yes, she's saying, you know, take care of yourself, make the judgment for yourself. You know, only you know what's right for you, you know, which is actually a very important thing to teach someone.
Yeah, I think as Dances with Incels in the chat says, the Romans were right about not having your arrows take control of you. And I think that's just generally good advice about not letting your feelings get away from what you know is right and what you really believe, when whether it's someone trying to guilt you or shame you or trying to cajole you into something you don't like. It's being able to stand up for yourself and let your better judgment win rather than just being carried away with the moment is good advice.
Yeah, it is the classic, you know, don't let your feelings cloud your judgment. You know, that's basically what she's saying here, and that is a very good thing to be telling a teenager who will be going through quite a few feelings.
I'm sorry.
So this is like the next day when she bumps into the boy.
It wasn't because I think of you as that kind of girl or anything like that.
This is I mean, the first scene is kind of expected. Like, that's just, you know, obviously it's not realistic, but it's a sort of classic encounter of the mother and the daughter. This scene, I was kind of surprised by this young man's reaction. You know, thinking back on it now that he's also had a clear head to think about everything that happened, he is apologizing to her for treating her like that kind of girl. Like it's actually, he's embarrassed that he kind of had that expectation of her. There's something he has to apologize for, because which
I find quite funny, because, you know, we've just had the mum explaining to the daughter that, you know, it's okay to have those feelings, and she instantly asked her, and, you know, straight off the bat, she said, well, do you think it was all him? You know, and now we've suddenly jumped forward, even though she didn't technically say no, but she also said, you know, she had very strong feelings as well. So, you know, goes both ways. They both had very strong feelings. We've now jumped forward to the boy in the situation, suddenly trying to explain himself, suddenly trying to apologize for his actions, when he's not even taking into account how she felt about the situation, you know, that she may have had just as strong feelings.
It's just that, I don't know. You're so terrific, and we've been together all evening, and
something that's a common thread in all of these videos that I love is that these I don't want to call them ugly, but they're very like ordinary looking people, like these actors. I mean, he's quite handsome, but the girls in this, they all kind of just look like they got that kind of girl next door look to them that I kind of appreciate. I don't know if it's just like they weren't as good at makeup back then or something.
No, I feel like they need the innocent girls part. I mean, the hot crazy scale has always been out there, so I feel like if you put a really hot girl in this, they'll be like, no, it's the girl's fault. We all know it's the girl's fault. She's crazy.
I just don't know what happened to me.
It's just as much my fault as it was yours. I shouldn't have stayed out so late anyway.
You're the nicest.
I think that's a good what she said there about staying out so late. I think that's good advice as well for you know, just when you're tempting fate, like when you before it gets that far.
I feel like we're both sat here sounding like severe mums right now. It's like, oh, you stayed out too late. Should have got your ass home. No, I know that's not what you mean by that. I feel like it's kind of the same sort of feeling as, you know, when you've outstayed your welcome. You know, you've had a really great night together, but then you carry it on when it's not needed to. You know, it's knowing the right balance of, okay, we've had a great night, but, you know, time's actually getting on. You know, we can always hang out again tomorrow. Whereas I feel like they kind of knew it got to that point, and instead of going home, they stayed out longer, and obviously those feelings grew, shall we say, and things got a little heated. So yeah, I do, you know, staying out late is not what we mean when mums say, "Oh, you stayed out too late." It's actually, you know, they knew in themselves, they knew in their own judgment that if they stayed out later, things were going to, you know, progress and go further, which is obviously what happened in this situation.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, it's so tempting when you're having a good time and you really like someone and they want,
absolutely.
You know,
Girl I've ever met. And, oh, we have so much fun together that I'd sure hate to ruin everything.
So would I.
I love the way these teenagers dress.
It's great. I love it.
Okay, now, is everything just about finished? The last spectacular issue of this year's Signpost has to be ready for the lucky students of Central High the day after tomorrow. Mary, how's that literary page shaping up?
It's not very spectacular. One story and one poem.
Flavor. They set up in this scene that there's another girl who used to do great illustrations for their little school paper, but she had to drop out of school because she, you know, well, you find out later it's because she had a baby.
Sure. Come on, I'll walk you home.
Jeff, isn't that Eileen?
Eileen.
Yeah, sure is. Baby and all.
Gee, I haven't seen her since she left school. That looks like Mary and Jeff.
She looks like she's aged 1,000 years.
I feel like they've done this on purpose. They're like, oh, she had a baby when she was in school. Let's make her look haggard and really tired and she's not happy. There is not a single smile on that face.
She looks like she hasn't slept for since
the baby was born.
I wonder if they'll say hello to me. Maybe they'll cross the street so they won't have to.
The inner monologue, like Punky. Inner monologue there.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
Oh, look at it.
That is a giant baby.
Is that like a shaved toddler? That's
a shaved toddler.
I mean, that's something weird looking about the baby.
No, that is.
That looks like they've just shaved the hair and the eyebrows off like a 4-year-old.
That's not a baby. It's just not a baby. That's literally a 4-year-old in a pram.
Eileen, she's sweet. Blonde like you, huh? Yeah. What's her name? Susan Elizabeth. Oh, that's a darling name. Susie. Is she a lot of trouble, Eileen? Well, it's tiring, but it's not too bad when Fred gives me a hand. Of course, he's not used to babies, but he's a real whiz at changing diapers. You should see him.
Cloth nappy?
Of course, he just adores Susie. He'd do anything for her. When she grows up, he wants to give her everything. Buy her nice clothes and send her to college.
Lies.
Hey, how's Fred getting along anyway? I hear he's got a job at the steel mill.
Oh, Fred's doing just fine. Of course, it's not the kind of job he planned on, but still, he enjoys it. He really looks forward to going to work every morning. He says it's a lot better than school, and he's making a lot of money.
Yeah, for those who aren't watching this and are just listening, I mean, just to clarify, it's come across quite obvious that this Eileen is completely lying about her life. You know, she's saying that looking after a baby is an absolute doddle. You know, they get plenty of sleep. That I'm assuming the father of the child, Fred, was it? Loves his job. You know, he's really happy. He helps look after the baby. When the clips that were just shown when she was saying this, you know, he doesn't want to get out of bed. He's sat on the sofa smoking cigarettes and completely ignoring Eileen and the baby. You know, so I feel
he's like a 19-year-old kid, so you can't really be surprised that he's not that into being a dad. Like,
they're
trying to make it cautionary. Like, this is not the life you want, without putting too much kind of blame and too much kind of social bag, like not making it so shameful or anything, but just not what you choose.
To a video I remember watching in school, it was quite similar. There was a little bit of shame there, and it was very much, you know, if you have a child at 16 or younger, then you have to drop out of school. You will get a terrible job, and you know you won't be able to socialize with your friends and all this. And it was quite pushy on this is all the bad things that are going to happen. You know, they never explained. They never explained why, or you know, if you would get any help. They basically just said, you know, if you get pregnant due to your own judgment, then you're on your own. You know, that was basically how they kind of put it, and just put a whole dampener on the whole situation. You know, and it seems very similar to what they're doing here. You know, this Eileen's talking to her old school friends, but she is clearly lying about everything. You know, she's saying that her life's great, it's a doddle, when clearly it's not. She is finding it difficult, you know.
Whether it's this or the modern equivalents where they are trying to show teenagers just how difficult it is to be a parent, and you know, this isn't what you want, you're still young, don't you want to keep being independent and working on your career? And that is pretty good advice for teenagers. Like, look ahead, don't get so caught up in the moment. Like, your boyfriend now, it may not be the absolute best father in the world, you know, the kind of man that you want to marry. You really have to think about what you're doing. That's not bad advice, but I do wonder if all of this sort of fear-mongering among teenagers may have contributed to women and men later in life not wanting to have children and sort of putting it off and thinking, like, that's really difficult, that's really hard, like, this is going to hold me back.
I think it might have come down to the whole rebellion side of things as well. You know, as we know, if you keep telling a teenager no or don't do that, they're going to go and do it, you know, because they think it's cool, and they're going to rebel against you or your teachers. You know, they're going to do the complete opposite. So if you're constantly telling them, you know, don't hook up with this guy, don't have children, what are they going to do? You know, they're probably going to hook up with that guy and be a bit reckless about it.
Yeah,
because
well,
at the end of the day,
but the you know, sex among teenagers is actually much lower than it ever. Perhaps not due to sex education, but due to, you know, internet and porn and things. But I think
that's down to just kids not getting out anymore. I mean, I think we briefly covered it. Yeah, that, you know, they do just sit on the internet, as you say, Poe. They don't actually socialize anymore. Whereas I feel like that gap in between, sort of just after I left school, that group and the group now. So the first group, you know, they're the ones that were kind of, I think, were the ones to be rebelling. And I mean, this is just from personal experience and knowing basically the kids who are a couple of years younger than me in school. I say kids, obviously they're sort of adults now. I say sort of adults because they still don't behave like it. But, you know, they're sort of 2-3 kids down and all have different dads and don't work, or, you know, scrounge off this, that, and the other. And it is, you know, it is sad to see. And it is kind of a case of they've all got attitudes. They're not nice people. And it is a certain group. But it was the certain group where they suddenly changed the sex education classes to, rather than sort of scaremongering, it was more of a just don't do this. You know, it wasn't a like in this video, or the videos, you know, I was shown, you might have been shown, you know, this is what could happen. You know, you might end up dropping out of school. It's all going to be bad. It was more just don't do it. You know, just don't do that. Just, why would you do that? You're too young. Just leave it alone. Next subject. You know, they didn't really explain anything, you know, properly. So I think that's another reason, is it just went south. If you don't explain something, especially with teenagers or even children, if you tell for an example, if you tell a child off, but you don't explain to them why, they're going to be upset about that for ages. They're not going to understand what they did wrong. Whereas if you know, say to them, okay, don't do that, this is why, and you actually explain the situation as to why it was wrong, or, you know, why it would be wrong if they haven't done it yet, then that's going to make a lot more sense and make a lot more of an impact, instead of just saying no. If you just say no, they're just going to go and do it anyway, because they don't know what the consequences are.
Perhaps. I do wonder if saying, I think you're right, when proper authority hasn't been established and it's not properly backed up, I think it's possible. You know, if you're in the army and your sergeant says don't do something, you don't need a reason. It could just be completely arbitrary. He could say, you know, don't wear black socks, and that's what goes. Like, that's the rule. Yeah. You follow it.
Yeah, I feel like it depends who's telling you and how many other people in society are following said rules.
Yes. Yeah. I think that matters much more. If
you've got a group or peer pressure, as we know, you know, peer pressure has a lot to answer for. You know, if your friends in that group are hooking up with boys, then, you know, what's going to stop you? You know, nobody's told them it's wrong. You know, so yeah.
I think that's going to be much more important than anything your parents say or anything you see in an instructional film at school. Unfortunately, it's that social contagion. I think is
are doing.
More important than you know. They used to call it peer pressure. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know if they still teach that in school. Like,
I don't know.
When
I
it comes
haven't
to drugs
heard
and
the
sex,
term peer pressure for a very long time.
Yeah,
is peer
but
pressure still a thing?
I think it was completely mischaracterized, though. This idea of peer pressure, where it kind of sounds like the proper cajoling, like slightly coercive, like, oh, go on, like you want to, like, oh, we're not gonna hang out with you if you don't.
Yeah, that's
when
what
really
we
I think the real peer pressure is just much more gentle than that, where
you could just see it. Nobody has to say anything. Like as you just said, in school we had assemblies on peer pressure, and it was the classic drug assemblies of don't let your peers peer pressure you, and you'd have these horrendous clips of these chavs horrendously acting, trying to pressure you into taking drugs, like you just did. Oh, you go on, try it, it's fine. But yeah, I do think you're right. The actual true peer pressure is you could just be in a crowd of people, and if everybody else is doing something, humans are sheep at the end of the day. There's the classic example of if everybody starts clapping, you're going to join in. That's just what it is, and that is the true peer pressure. If everybody else is doing it, you're going to follow suit.
Yeah.
Why don't we ever see you anymore? Oh, well, we don't seem to get out much. Of course, having an apartment of your own keeps you kind of busy. Besides, we both enjoy spending a quiet evening together at home.
Well, sounds like things are working out okay for you and Freddie.
Oh, yes, we're getting along just fine. Sometimes I wish we had had more time to work things out. The kids up at the signpost office were asking about you today. I wish you were there.
I do wonder what are we supposed to take away from this relationship between Eileen and Freddie, where they're obviously not happy with the way things turn out. They're not getting on very well. They've got this kid. They can't go out.
I think it's leaning towards it was a one-time fling. They didn't think things through, and now they're stuck together. Basically,
do you think
they're making it out like, oh, you have to stay together now. You have a kid.
Yeah. Are we supposed to believe that they would have been all right if they had waited and got married and had the kids after an appropriate time? Do you think that they would have done better, or do you think they just weren't right for each other to begin with?
I think they weren't right for each other to begin with. I feel like it's leaning more towards, if they hadn't stayed out too late and hadn't taken that next step, then I don't think they'd actually still be together. Or I don't actually think they would have worked out. They would have moved on with their lives. Whereas, now they're in this situation, and, they're making out that they're not moving on with their lives.
Here to do the artwork. There's nobody there that can do it as well. Oh. I sure miss the gang and all the fun we used to have in school. The last issue's coming out in a couple of days. We're having a big wind-up party at Terry's place on Friday.
Well, I think we'd better be going now, Mary. Well, nice to see you again, Eileen. Say hello to Fred for me, will you, please? Sure.
It was nice seeing you again, Eileen.
Oh, did she just not get invited to the party?
I think she did. I think she did.
Okay, she did get invited.
She said, oh, there's a party, mentioning it, but the fact that nobody kind of answered, I think, was, looking at the baby afterwards, it's like, oh wait, no, you've got a baby, you can't come, which is crazy.
Bye. Sure. Nice seeing you. So the gang's having a party. They'll have a lot of fun.
There we go.
Sped up dancing. This is a very grown-up party for a bunch of teenagers, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking that they're all sat there drinking pints, and then they turned the kitchen into a proper bar. And yeah, I suppose it looks like a grown-up party compared to the kind of house parties that youths have these days. But
do you know what that kind of dance is called? Is that like a sock hop or is it a Charleston?
It looks a bit like a Charleston. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Charleston.
Yeah, it's a little bit late, isn't it, for a Charleston?
Not necessarily. No, I mean, if it's teens doing it, the younger lot would still be doing it, compared to the older lot who would, be moving on to the next sort of dance craze. But yeah, it's Charleston was actually was around for quite a while.
I would be surprised that the teens would be revolutionizing their dances on, posting their TikTok dances and
no.
the new dance every week on these days. They should be flossing.
Oh dear.
I actually can't remember where this video goes after this. Oh yeah, it's just the same scenario repeated.
Staying out too late.
Yeah. Oh, I remember what happens now. It's quite sweet.
Oh, Jeff, isn't it a wonderful night?
Yeah, you're pretty wonderful too, Mary. You know, we've been going for quite a while now, haven't we? You're the nicest girl I've ever met, Mary.
That skinny tie he's wearing is quite that was it. That was back in fashion, like quite recently, right? I mean, when I say quite recently, like 10 years ago.
It was about 10 years ago, yeah.
It's like
sorry to drop the bombshell there, Poe, but yeah, about 10 years ago, the skinny ties were back in fashion.
Men's suits don't change very much. Like there's a kind of change in the fit, and like it's usually the tie that changes the kind of fastest. Like that I've noticed, like the width of the tie, the size of the knot.
Mary, Mary, will you wear my school ring?
Yes, Jeff.
I've seen a few like teenage what do you call it, rituals like this, where couples who are going steady will exchange a ring or a garment. Or in some Christian communities they give each other a promise ring, to sort of like a pre-engagement, or I saw a cruel inversion of this on the when I was in London recently for the art exhibition. There was a bus advertising what they called a pear ring, P-E-A-R, and it's a ring that you wear to show that you're single, so that people will hit on you in public.
Oh dear, no.
And I was trying to imagine what this ring. I'm going to look it up now because I have no idea what this ring looks like and whether men would actually wear it. I used to do
the opposite of if I went out clubbing, back in those days, with my friend, when I was with ex from the past, and he wasn't with me, I used to purposefully put a ring on my wedding finger, on my ring finger, just so that guys would leave me alone. I would do the complete opposite. I'd put a ring on my hand so that guys would leave me alone. But the funny thing I've noticed now is, regardless of how many rings you've got on your hands, if you've got a ring on your ring finger, whether it's an engagement ring or a wedding ring, some guys will still try it on. They don't seem to have that respect anymore of, oh, I'm going to... How do you identify? What?
Maybe they're just so ignorant that they don't even know. they don't even know what it means.
Why is it spelled pear as in the fruit pear? You'd think it'd be spelled as in...
I went to the website and I just found... The first thing I found was single straight or single LGBTQ. But they have a different ring for, I guess, for both. I still haven't seen this ring. Like, I can't actually...
It's a social experiment.
There we go. It looks like this. Now, what man is going to wear this is what I wanted to know.
They're not. I mean, I feel... Oh, dear. I feel like it could be an interesting idea, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like it would get people out actually talking to each other. I mean, we've advocated this for ages, and why, the dating scene is dead, because people just don't go out anymore. They sit at home behind a screen. They don't actually socialize, talk to the person in the bar, talk to somebody down the street. So this might be something in favor of that, but at the same time, do we need to specify, who you are? Because you kind of do that when you talk to people, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, I as you know, I've retired from talking about dating. I shouldn't have brought up the pear ring, really. I just thought it was interesting that it's a complete inversion of having a ring that shows you're taken, and now you need a ring to show that you're not. Just a visual signal. It's just a supposed.
It is odd. It's very odd.
This is the thumbnail today, so I just wanted to show it in all its glory. It's a Norman Rockwell painting called a Private Moment, I think, or it's just called Prom Dress. But I thought it was just cute. As you know, Birdie, I have a bit of a thing for women in boyish clothes, as you're very.
I feel personally attacked right now.
But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like, in the
dungarees.
mirror, she looks like the kind of Cinderella princess in a prom dress, and then
Yes.
in the foreground you see her in a kind of turned up jeans and a flannel shirt tucked in, with a kind of oily rag poking out the pocket or whatever that is.
Again, I feel personally attacked, Power. I feel like this is just completely aimed at me when I'm playing with the engines, and there are genuine photos of me like this, not holding up a dress. That's for sure. But yes,
we have 10 minutes. I don't want to
we have
go
a
over
couple
time
of
tonight
super
because it's just
we
been
do
a
have
bit
a
of
couple of super chats.
It's been a bit of a week. So if you could do 10 minutes on another one of these. This one is called Are Manners Important? And this seems to be talking more about children. But I did think that was something interesting to talk about here. The first few minutes just talks about what good manners are. They use an example like kicking a football back to some kids when they kick it out of their game. If it lands near you, it's just good manners to kick it back. Like, you might not think of those kinds of things as being really formal etiquette. It's just thinking about what other people would be comfortable with, like what would make other people that make their lives easier, and just helping them out, even though it doesn't directly benefit you in any way. That's just what it means to, returning the shopping trolley after you're done shopping is a famous example. And it shows after describing what it means to be courteous, there's this example of a where is it? This boy coming home, and I found this really funny.
Yes, dear. Come in and say hello to Mrs. Norris.
Letting the screen door slam, strewing his clothes about the kitchen, certainly isn't being considerate of his mother.
I'll get him. Hello? Who? Karen? No, she's not in.
The least he could do is offer to take a message.
I think it's interesting that this little boy, by today's standards, he's quite sweet and a little bit plucky. He's got a bit of attitude about him, but he's not what you consider these days to be an extremely rude boy.
The fact he answered the phone to begin with was astonishing. I mean, seeing the public constantly. I mean, even with the trust, with the charity, the amount of children we see. And for a prime example, there was a young boy last weekend, and he came up and he was absolutely mesmerized by one of our engines, and he was so polite. He was very knowledgeable, and I was in absolute awe of this kid. And I stood talking to his mum for ages, and I just thought, this is amazing. Like, we need more kids like this. He was, he came up to us and he looked at me and said, "Oh, how are you today?" And this kid was only about 8 years old. This 8-year-old boy said, "How are you today?" And I thought, excuse me. I was so taken aback that this little boy was so polite. And he came and said, "Oh, it's absolutely wonderful." This is honestly what this little boy was saying about the engine. He said, "It's absolutely wonderful. I love the sound of it. I love the smell." And then he was saying, where are you based? Or we came to the steam fair and all this. And I just said, would you like to stand on the footplate? And his little face lit up, and that was it. He was away talking to Alex about the engine, about everything. And he was so polite. And that is such a rare thing to see these days, because the usual kids we get will go, "Oh, blow the whistle, mate." That's it. And then they'll walk off. That's it. They don't know what it is. They won't say hello. They'll just walk past. I mean, we've had kids kick the engine before. They'll kick the rolls on it before. Because they just, I don't know whether it's because they don't understand or because they're not taught to respect things as much anymore. Just being courteous and having common sense are two things that have basically disappeared, and especially in children, I've noticed. When we see kids coming up to us of all ages as well, I'm not just talking like teenagers being angsty. I'm talking 8-year-olds, kids, and they will be rude and they will swear at you, and I'm thinking, there is no way on earth that I would let my child behave like that. And what's even better is either the parents will behave the same, or they won't apologize, or they just won't say anything. They'll just ignore it. They'll just they're completely oblivious to what their child has just said to me. And I'm thinking, right, okay. But unfortunately, it's become the normal, so.
I think common sense I think children basically don't have common sense.
No, they don't.
They have what we were talking about earlier. They have peer group sense, where they will literally just copy things that other people are doing, and if it's in any way nuanced or subtle, they won't notice it. They won't be able to copy it. They say that children are very intuitive, like they can pick up on things, but from the way that many children just do not know when they've upset adults, if you don't literally tell them this is what you're supposed to do, this is what's polite, this is rude. Yes. They don't have that common sense to not do it. It's basically, I think manners are a habit that you just need to get into. And if it seems like common sense, if you have good manners, it seems like common sense to you. Like obviously, like just don't let the door slam in someone's face. You can just, it'll take you, 2 extra seconds to keep it open for them.
And I have to admit, I have noticed more and more that if I'm just, courteous to somebody, like you say, holding a door open for someone, going back sort of 5-10 years, if I did that, it didn't really mean anything. It was just the polite thing to do. They would just say, oh, thank you, a gentle thank you. Whereas now, if I hold a door open for somebody, they are so surprised that someone's even done that for them. The actual shock on their face is like, oh my God, thank you so much. You didn't have to do that. And it's no skin off my nose, but we have the same again at the trust. When we help people out, we don't necessarily expect anything back in terms of, for just being nice to you, just, holding a hand out to help them down the steps on the trailer. They don't expect it, which to me is actually quite upsetting to see, that people are surprised that we're even being nice to them. And that is a lot to answer for, especially in today's society, that people just aren't courteous to each other anymore.
Well, I think this. We'll see what this kid does next, because I didn't really get very far in this video. But we'll see how he treats Mrs. Norris.
It's nice to see you again. Hello.
It's time for one of Mickey's favorite programs, and he doesn't stop to think that the set may disturb his mother and her guest. It isn't that Mickey wants to be rude; he just hasn't stopped to think.
I think that's a pretty good point. Like when you the difference between being rude and being inconsiderate, like to be rude to someone, it always seems like you're intentionally not you're not being polite to them because you don't like them or you don't think they're worth it. But actually being inconsiderate, being something that didn't even occur to you to do it, is also rude. But I think we let that slide. We go, oh, he didn't know that was the rule. He didn't know that you're supposed to do that.
Yeah, he wasn't intending to be rude. He just didn't stop to think. Which is very common in kids. It does take children a little, they're still learning at the end of the day. They do need to think about things a bit more to be able to know what's right and what's wrong. So clearly, this boy's just come in from school or being out, and he's just come straight in.
What he does every day. He's just working completely off habit without regard to Mrs. Norris being there.
Yeah.
Mickey, I'm afraid you're going to have to turn off that fan. Mickey.
I feel like a modern kid today would just get like "F you, mum." Like,
it was when she asked him to all she said was his name, and he turned around and went, "Shh, mom," like basically telling her to shut up. And it's like, oh yeah, if I had done that as a kid, I would have had a slipper thrown at me. You just don't do it. It's again, he wasn't thinking. It is obviously, it seems to be routine that he comes in and puts the telly on, but at the same time, it's almost like, does he actually have respect for his parents? Because if that's routine, if suddenly his routine's messed up, then he's probably not going to stop to think about what's rude and what's inconsiderate, because it's just what he's used to. So
Mickey, may I speak with you?
Look at him reading a book.
Is she gone?
He's got like a cowboy's lasso on the wall.
Brilliant.
It's like a very curated kids' room.
It's way too neat.
Yes, she is. And I must say, you behave very rudely to Mrs. Norris and me. Well, she made me miss my favorite program. Shouldn't have turned the set on.
I mean, I empathise. Like back in the day, when before we had YouTube or VHS, like if you missed a program, you missed it. Like I now completely understand why he wanted to put it on.
When your siblings, the adverts come on and you go to the bathroom or something and you just hear your siblings yelling from the other room going, "It's on," and you just yeet yourself over the back of the sofa to be able to get back in time for the program to start. I mean, kids nowadays will never understand.
Now you understand why he didn't want to be nice. He was just a bit annoyed about missing his program. He was he wasn't in the mood to be polite to Mrs. Norris.
No, he wanted his program.
Place. Honestly, Mickey, I don't know where your manners have gone to. Manners? Is that all you grown-ups ever think about?
Yes, we do think about them, Mickey, because we've learned from experience that manners are important in helping people get along together. You'll never be happy with others until you learn to be considerate of them.
I get along all right.
Do you, Mickey? I wonder.
Sure. Kids don't need manners. Manners are just for grown-ups.
I think you're wrong about that. Someday you'll find it out.
That's interesting, like his worldview. I mean, I do like kids do think that they won't be judged for like by grown-up standards, and it is kind of true in the way that kids will swear in front of each other and be like joking in front of each other, but they won't. They know not to do it in front of grown-ups because that's like a different world.
I mean,
almost.
I feel like in the same way, you know, again, growing up with a group, you know, being in a group of kids. You know, when I was a kid, you know, again, you swear in front of each other, you joke around, you might be rude to each other, not intentionally. But at the same time, you know, if you ask your friend, "Oh, can I have a swig of your drink?" Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. You know, you will actually be nice to each other, or you'll hold a door open for each other. So there is that kind of weird balance there of, kids are actually polite to each other when they
have
want
their
to.
own rules, I think. It's their own
they set their own
set of rules.
Which is kind of, in a way, the stepping stone to being considerate, I think. It's the starting point.
I'm interested to see where this goes, though.
Oh, manners.
I'll tell you what interests me is that, especially with boys and, you know, little boys and also men, boys, when they're among other boys, they have a very competitive, very argumentative sort of banter way of talking to each other, where they understand there's a mutual respect and a mutual affection, almost not in the way there was affection in the last video we were watching. I mean, like a friendship there. That once they've reached the level of friendship, they don't have to be polite to each other, and in fact, they can be rude to each other without it hurting. You know, they're sparring with each other. They can play fight, and they can play fight with their words as well. Where if you taught a boy this age to be perfectly polite to everyone he met, he might be good at talking to adults, but I think he might struggle to make friends with boys if he didn't. If he actually paid attention towards lessons and thought like, okay, boys aren't going to like me if I call them doo-doo head or stupid.
Yeah, I feel like the mum was right in some ways in saying, you know, you were rude to me and obviously the friend that was there. But there's a different way of talking to adults to talking to children. I mean, we do it now. You know, if you've got a group of kids, you speak to them differently as if you speak to a group of adults. You know, there is a different way of handling things and a different mannerism. You know, you are going to joke around a bit more and lighten the mood with the kids. And if you're teaching them something, you know, that's what you're going to do. But when it comes to adults, you know, you're going to be polite. You're going to be a bit more formal. And I think it's that formality that does make the big difference. Because obviously with manners comes formality. So with, you know, a group of kids, they're not going to be formal with each other at all. If you've got a group of kids being formal, then I'd be amazed and I'd be concerned in what you've done to that child.
Something to think about. He hasn't gotten along too well with his friends lately, but...
Kids don't need manners.
The next morning, Mickey has all but forgotten his talk with his mother, but something happens on the way to school to remind him of it.
This narration feels a bit redundant. Look both ways before you cross.
Maybe I should have gone around, but oh well, accidents will happen.
It was not an accident, you horrible boy.
And later on at the playground, Mickey sees the ball coming toward him, and he obeys a sudden impulse to get into a game he's not a part of. It starts an argument, and then the bell rings to break up the game.
He asserts his dominance and becomes the new alpha male.
Yeah.
Is that what happens next?
Yeah. I feel like he is the classic bully.
I didn't realize it was a class game.
But the thing is that I mean, this is going to sound worse than I mean it to, but being what's there's bullying and there's bullying, right? Like the bullies often don't do very badly at school in terms of socially. We talked about this when we talk about alpha females and friend groups. Is that being it's often the people who have the most power in social situations that can be the cruelest, and they get to that position by being cruel. That doesn't mean that that's like a good idea or that you should do that, but this idea that by being assertive and getting into arguments and getting into fight, that Mickey's not going to make friends. I don't know if that's I don't think that's realistic advice.
No, I don't think it is. If he's basically saying, if you're actually going to be nice to these kids, then they'll be nice back to you, which actually no is not necessarily the case. As we know, there's always going to be a dominant one, and in this case, I feel like Mickey does see himself as the alpha boy, whether or not he realizes it. I have noticed they have picked a slightly taller boy as well to play Mickey. So in terms of him pushing people over and muscling in on a football game that he wasn't part of, nobody actually stands up to him alone, if that makes sense. So it's always a group, but they didn't really get involved with anything. I feel like they see, oh well, this kid's just a bit of a sod. We'll just kind of leave him to it, which at the time is making him more of an outcast. Where again, relating it to now, if a kid did that now, then it wouldn't be, oh, he's an outcast. It would just be he's an ass, he's a bully, and that would just be the end of it.
Just before lunch, Mickey gets a chance to learn what it's like when someone else's bad manners make him uncomfortable.
Can I tell you an awful story? When I was a kid, I don't know if I was just extremely socially awkward or what it was, but I had some very misguided ideas of how to make people like me and how to be like funny. Like I was always trying to be funny and cool, and I think I was like not very good at copying what other kids did or copying from the TV, and I'd always get it wrong. Maybe it just feels that when you're an adult and you just think back on all the worst things you ever did as a child, and I just completely misread the situation. And I remember one time when I was sitting next to a boy that I didn't like have a crush on him, but I kind of liked him and I wanted him to like me. And I found out that his parents were divorced.
Right.
And I said, like, I don't know why I thought this was funny, but I said, like, it's funny that your parents are divorced. And he got really upset. And I obviously, as an adult now, I feel terrible for saying that because I understand what I was like back then. I didn't even know what I was saying. I hadn't. It's like I didn't have that. I said like kids don't have common sense. Like it didn't occur to me to even run that simulation.
I feel like you said it in terms of it's funny, as in it was more you didn't understand. It's funny like, oh, that's a bit odd. Not it's funny like, oh, haha, that's hilarious. Your parents are divorced.
I think, I thought it was cool to be like overly callous and like a little bit mean. Like, the way that I saw my brothers being with other boys, or the way that I saw people relating to each other, like I could see them being a little bit mean to each other and it being like a funny joke, And I thought that just like, oh, I know this thing about you, so I'll just say that. And it was like, I immediately realized it was completely the wrong thing to say. And I've like, honestly, it's like the worst thing I've ever said to anyone. I feel so bad about it.
This one thing you said, it's like, that meme where you wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, oh, remember something you said in like year 7? That is exactly what you're explaining.
This kid must have felt so bad that that he thought I was like bullying him for this, but really I was just trying to think of like anything to say to him that would like bring us closer as friends. because he wasn't really my friend, and we were just like, we had to sit together for whatever class we were in.
Yeah.
I think we were about like 7 years old, and we later did become friends. So I know that he didn't hate me for that, but I could tell as soon as I said it that it upset him. And I think about it like I don't think about it every day, but it's something that I return to. Is like a massive regret. Poor kid.
That is brutal.
But that's like this. That's what I mean when I say kids don't have common sense. It's like they telling them, "Oh, well, do you think you would like it if someone said that to you?" Like that's just common sense for an adult. It's
yeah,
like, just think about that.
It's that it goes back to what they were saying with the kid in the video earlier. He just didn't think. He came in and did something, and he just didn't.
You just don't think about other people. It's like
which is what kids do. Kids do tend to act before they think. That's just what they do.
I want to wrap up this episode soon because we've been going for an hour. But let's just see what happens to this boy first.
Yeah. Kids are real stuff English.
And so Mickey has quite a lot to think about during lunch, especially when he suddenly realizes that he's sitting alone, and he begins to wonder whether the others may not be passing him by.
I don't think they'd pass me by on purpose. Kids don't care about manners. I wish there wasn't any such thing as manners. Boy, if I were president, I'd put a stop to manners. That's what I'd...
Just typical American cafeteria with a picture of Abraham Lincoln on the wall.
Obviously, because why wouldn't you?
You've got this little dream sequence.
So, I'm following the wishes to them or to anyone else.
Just one more.
Coming here today.
President Mickey.
I'm here because I disagree.
This dream sequence is going on for a long time.
And here's why. I worked hard on it. I was pretty excited when the day of the contest came, but then some boy ran right through it. He bumped into me and knocked the poster right out of my hand. It tore down the middle, and the whole thing was ruined for me and for the class. He could have been more considerate and gone around it. And that's why I think manners are important.
That's what I think, too. I don't like sissy stuff any more than the rest of you kids do. But I'm for manners just the same, especially after what happened at the playground. I'm the captain of the class team, who challenged the fifth graders. It was a tough match, and the score was tied. Then somebody just had to be a smart aleck and break into the game. Then the bell rang, and we didn't get a chance to finish. Boy, he sure spoiled everything. Just because he figured nobody else mattered but him. That's bad manners. I'm against this proclamation. What about the rest of you?
I think the key thing he said there was, nobody else matters but him. And it does come across like that. If you don't have manners, you instantly think that person's selfish. They're not thinking of other people. If you're not being courteous, you're not thinking of other people. And that is a main thing. If you've got a child being a bit of a sod on the playground, then he might just not have thought ahead of what he was doing. Whereas if you've got an adult just being plain rude, then he's just selfish. I will instantly think that person is selfish. They don't care about how you feel, and this does happen quite a lot in any form of customer service, any form, whether it's in a coffee shop or shopping, anything. And I have come across a few people, and there's a bit of a running joke. I won't mention which hotel it is, but there is a rather posh hotel down the road from where we live. And some guests do come up to where I work. And it is very obvious where these guests come from, because they get waited on hand and foot at this hotel. It's a 5-star hotel, to the point where they'll even have their tea poured for them. And when they come to us, they expect the same service. It's not going to happen. They will instantly treat you differently. They don't have any manners, and they are never courteous. They won't, and that's not just to the staff. That's also to other customers. They don't care how much noise they're making. They won't move their chair out of the way. They'll leave mess all over the table, on the floor. They just do not care. And to me, that is, if you don't have manners and you're not courteous, you are just selfish. And they've just shown that in the video. That little Mickey boy who didn't want manners to exist was being incredibly selfish. He wasn't thinking of his peers. He was not thinking of how he upset that girl with her poster or how he ruined that football game. That didn't matter to him, because it impact on his daily life, because he just pushed it aside.
What about the slightly more archaic or arbitrary side of manners, where for instance, there's a heated debate in Britain, in England, about what should go into the teacup first, the milk or the tea. And I'm sure you've got an opinion about that, but these days it's pretty much arbitrary. You'll end up with tea with some milk in either way, but it's kind of for a while it was a sort of status symbol where you something about cracking the china if it heats up too quickly, but there were these, like in a restaurant where there's loads of different knives and forks, and if you know which knives and forks to use, and you know how to sit and which words to say, it signals that you're accustomed to being in that situation and that you are rich enough, you're high status enough to be natural and at ease in these kinds of situations, where that's not exactly being considerate. It's not exactly having good manners, like you're considering other people's comfort. It's just a signal of your own importance or your own status, your own wealth. It's just kind of a flex, to use modern vernacular. So I do wonder where these things often they do overlap, but a lot of people, something like using correct grammar, where saying, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something people say wrong. My daughter started saying, instead of saying the word anything, she says anything, which is kind of a natural mistake to make, because she's never seen words written down. She knows the word think, and when she says anything, she just says think.
I think a prime example of that is when people pronounce TH as an F sound.
Yeah.
It's
like you're not actually hurting anyone by saying that. You're not inconveniencing anyone, but it instantly it indicates something about you to people who know what to listen for. You've just told them that you're not one of them. Right? Most people probably won't even notice that kind of thing, but it's just
I feel like
signifier.
Like you say, it is kind of a status thing as well. You know, when it comes to the class system, people, it doesn't exist. It definitely does. It definitely does exist. And putting it bluntly, I mean, I know I'm from a lower class. I have a very weird accent, especially when I'm very tired. And I know full well that somebody of, a very much higher class is most likely going to be very well spoken, and pronounces every word perfectly. Now I know I don't do that, and I'm okay with that, but again, you can kind of tell just by talking to them that what group you're in, if that makes sense. So it's not even where you stand. It's not like that. It's a case of you've kind of said, I'm from this area of the country and this class, whereas you're from that area of the country. Now, I'm not saying that their manners are going to be any different, because, we could have exactly the same manners. We could be both just as courteous as one another. So
you could be posh and still rude, right? It's in fact, that's a kind of stereotype, is the incredibly well-spoken, wealthy, upper class people who are really rude to waiters and inconsiderate.
From both angles, you could have the very, as you just said, the very posh, wealthy upper class being rude and selfish, and snobbish, and have the I don't care attitude. But at the same time, you could have somebody from the very lowest of the low class, who can be rude, selfish, and have the I don't care attitude. So they can be from two completely different angles. You've got the high class person having the I don't care attitude, perhaps because they've got more money, or that's not their job attitude, which is something that does wind me up. Or you've got somebody from the other end of that who have got the I don't care attitude because they really don't. They might not have any money. They might not have anything to lose. So even though they're both from completely separate ends, their manners could be very similar. So it's either they've not been taught, or they've been taught incorrectly in terms of, oh, well, you don't need to care about those people. And I do think it works in a social setting as well. So you take anyone who, let's say that they don't care about general public. If they're walking down the street, they're not courteous. They won't say excuse me or hello to somebody. The very British thing, if you say hello as you walk past anyone in the street, they won't do that. But if you put them in a party setting with all of their peers and people they talk to constantly, and suddenly they're very nice to them, they're very courteous, their attitude changes completely. It does make me wonder why, if they've got those
they
manners,
know how to be polite, why won't they do it all the time?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I don't understand. Comment, please answer why do they do that? If they're able to do it, why don't they just be courteous to everyone?
Well, I mean, they say manners cost nothing, and to a degree that is true.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to get on with your life, thinking about everyone surrounding you and what would be convenient for them, it does take some amount of energy, some amount of thought that you may not be able to spare.
Yeah.
And looking at it from a completely selfish point of view, you can obviously benefit from being polite to people who are your peers or your betters. You can, you'll be able to benefit socially and materially by being polite to those people, whereas being polite to people below you, people serving you, it basically grants you nothing. And I will say that class distinctions, it's something that to us seems very it seems very crude, very unequitable, right? It seems like a very rude way to treat people, and there certainly is a way to treat people that's rude. You can take it too far, but I think that it is often misunderstood how people used to treat people of other classes, where it's almost like you're treating someone from, I don't know, like a different country, or there's just no mixing, to the extent that to maintain a proper boundary on acceptable behavior, they would have a different set of parameters for dealing with one's peers, for one's betters, and for one's, I don't know, employees, for people serving them, where you wouldn't necessarily be rude or unkind to them. That would still be bad, and that would actually make you look bad as well. But you would still be a little bit sort of distant from them, where you don't want to pretend to be their friend, if that makes sense. Like you're not trying to give them the illusion that they're your buddy.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely a balance to be had in terms of, being courteous and polite to a stranger, or to let's just say the general public, and having a different level of being courteous and kind to, let's say, a family member. There's going to be a difference there. You're not going to be overly friendly and really, really nice and, coming on too strong to somebody you've just met, because that is going to be weird. If you run up to somebody in the street and go, oh, hello, let me help you with that, and you've never met this person before, that can be slightly terrifying for the person you're running up to. But if you do that to your sibling, for instance, if you see they're struggling with something, you run up to them and said, oh, let me help with that, that's going to be acceptable. So there is the balance there of knowing how far to take it, in a way, having that balance of don't be rude, just general manners, the please, the thank yous, that's what I would consider to be the everyday manners, the generalized, doesn't take too much, just to say thank you if somebody holds the door open for you, that's not going to be too difficult, I would hope, compared to actually upping the ante a bit with family or friends, or even your co-workers. You're just going to be a bit more forward with it. You shouldn't be afraid to be more assertive with your manners.
I think typically, most people, to put a cap on this whole subject, I think regardless of the situation, who it is you're dealing with, I think most people watching this, and me, and probably you as well, could probably do with being 10% extra polite, extra considerate, extra friendly with people in their lives, and wouldn't would probably feel benefit from that. But you know, it's too easy just to sort of rush through life and not be rude, but just not really give some extra thought to it. When actually, it doesn't take much extra effort to make someone really happy to see you. You know, by just by just the tone of your voice when dealing with a stranger can make so much difference to how
linking
you
back to the advice for teenagers. You know, we're talking about the 50s advice for teenagers, but this just goes in general. You know, you can easily make someone's day just by helping them. You know, if they've dropped something on the floor, especially if it's, you know, an elderly person, just pick it up for them. You know, just very, very simple things. You don't have to make a point of, you know, being courteous. You don't have to yell good morning in their face. You know, that's not what we're on about here. You know, there is a gentle way of doing it. And I think that is an important thing to do. You know, being kind is something, you know, kindness comes with gentleness. You know, you don't have to, like I say, you have to make a point of doing anything. You don't need to do that. Just be courteous. That is it. Being courteous is the same as being gentle and kind. You know, with all teenagers, especially because I feel like teenagers do get a bad rap. They do. You know, I feel a lot of teenagers, you know, you see a group of teenagers, especially in today's society, you think, oh, they're going to be bruisers, they're going to swear at you as you walk past, which is, yes, quite often the case. But, you know, be that one who doesn't swear at people. You know, if you're a group of teenagers walking past a single person walking down the street, instead of, you know, being boisterous and loud, just say, oh, hello, or good morning, you know, as you walk past, you know, just so that they know you've acknowledged them. You know, that you're being courteous to them by not being loud and boisterous or taking up the pavement. You know, just be gentle. Start slow.
We've gone 20 minutes over time after I was trying to get out early on time. So let's go to the super chats. From DRT, our loyal patron, thank you very much for $20. We do have an outstanding. I want to make sure DRT knows that we haven't forgotten about your super chat suggestion from last week. But we've got one again for $20. DRT has asked Aidan Paladin if she's up for the Great Barbie Party. I forgot about the Great Barbie Party, but I believe we do have the funds to send a few women our panelists to the movies in our own separate locations. So Birdie, if you're up for it, I'll pay for your ticket and see if we can pay for some popcorn too.
Oh wow! Now we really are pushing.
I'm not paying for Alex's ticket; it's just yours.
No, he can pay for.
Go on your own.
This is the Wham Hour show.
DRT continues. I'm ready for the great panel in pink. We were supposed to wear pink, I guess. Audience watch Aidan Paladin's video on conspiracy theories and those who believe in them. Yes, she did make another. She drops a new video about every month on a different sort of psychological phenomenon. So I saw that one. For another $10 from DRT, thank you very much. Young men in Florida are, in my experience, incredibly behind the 8 ball. I don't know what that means. As youth is a hindrance for men and a boon to women, but undersexed men is the norm in the West and in Japan and Korea. I guess he was talking about how teenagers don't have sex anymore. From English Lawlist for $9.99. Thank you very much. I must be old-fashioned. I love manners and being courteous towards others. It's almost a lost art these days, like cursive. People see manners as weakness. I see it as good discipline, good stream. I mean, cursive is another one of those things where cursive makes sense if you have to write with a fountain pen or with a quill, where it's constantly picking up your pen from the paper and dabbing it down again.
With Alex constantly. For anybody who doesn't know my other half, he does write in cursive and he does write with fountain pens all the time. I mean, even when he's at work, he's got notebooks, he's scribbling things down with a fountain pen. Now, I find it mesmerizing because he always jokes that I write like a primary school teacher. So I do not write in cursive. I just write what I see is very simple, very easy to read writing. He basically insisted that he taught himself cursive. You know, he learned cursive in school, but carried it on throughout the years. And I do kind of find it slightly impressive. And it is like English Loyalist just said, you know, I do agree with manners and cursive, you know, all that kind of genre to be a sign of good education or good upbringing. And again, I think that just might be me being, you know, very old-fashioned in that way. But I do still believe that. I do think it's a good sign of hopefully a good and well-mannered person.
Well, I think being able to read cursive obviously will help you to understand, like to be able to read old documents, to read, you know, handwriting of older people. But in these days, I don't know if I can really say that it really has a benefit being able to write in cursive, other than being kind of impressive, right?
Yeah.
It's a nice sort of flourish.
It's a bit
but
of
it doesn't actually make your handwriting any easier to read. No,
I have to admit, I have mentioned this. I can't read Alex's handwriting if he rushes. You know, if he is actually making a point and doing it very, you know, writing neatly, then yes. And somebody's just commented, were you not taught cursive in school? No, we technically, yes, we were taught joined handwriting. That was it. It was never really called cursive. You know, when we say cursive, it's, you know, it's on a slant, it's very fluent.
Up, yeah.
It is actually different than just joined up handwriting.
They taught us to go to the end of the word and then cross the T's and dot the I's, which is where that expression comes from, where you have to do the entire word with one stroke and then go back and do the I's and the T's.
Yeah, I think I had it ruined for me in about year 6 in primary school, because I wrote this whole essay on an A4 piece of paper and I didn't join any of my writing. So I was told to do it again and I just went over the top of everything and joined it, and I never joined my writing up after that. I hate it. If I join my writing, I find it messy. I can't read my own writing if I try and join it. So I do write like a primary school teacher because that's my way of making it more legible. So
from DRT, final super chat for tonight for $5. As an Amerikansky. I love American regional accents. They add color, but they're being erased in favor of more homogenized broadcaster voice. The more that we share our broadcasts in terms of internet and TV, the more homogenized the whole world becomes. Not just within countries, but also between countries, where everyone. Have you ever heard people from foreign countries speaking English? They'll often use an American accent because they've learned English from Americans. They've learned it from TV or from films. They've kind of picked up that accent.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing happening within England and within America, where it's to have a regional accent, like as we were talking about earlier, it's seen as a little bit low class, like a little bit uneducated to speak what's known as incorrectly. You know, Professor Henry Higgins in famous My Fair Lady play opines at length on the subject.
I think the prime example of this is having a BBC voice. Have you heard that term when
RP
has a BBC voice? And it is a case of, you know, if you've got a British broadcasting voice, you know, that means you're supposed to be of higher class. But obviously now that doesn't really answer for anything. It's just a case of you've just told yourself to. I mean, anyone can put on. We call it a telephone voice at work, and I completely changed.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's
voice. Yeah, it's telephone voice. You know, if I'm on the phone to somebody, I've got a BBC voice, and nobody can understand what I'm saying, because I'm not talking as to how I would normally speak around my colleagues, and it is quite amusing.
Received pronunciation, RP.
Poe, I've just seen another comment. Where did the epic hat go?
Oh, it was too hot. It's just way too hot tonight.
You upset
My mum got me this, by the way. So anyone who likes the hat, you can say thank you, Poe's mum, in the comments.
Thank you, Poe's mum. I will say it for her. Thank you, Poe's mum. It's a very snazzy hat. It has brightened up the room this evening.
That's what the kids call a bucket hat.
A bucket hat. Yes.
Okay. I really need a drink, and I really need to just have a lie down in the dark for a while. So thanks everyone for coming. Thank you, Birdie, for looking at old videos with me.
Pleasure as always. I have the same plans as you this evening. Just curl up in a dark room.
It's too hot. It's been a whole week. And everyone, most importantly, get out.